Super good. Oh, just a great job from a super lady. This next member of the Medicare Quartet will be, is the oldest member. He really is. Of course, as you get older, things happen. He thinks the 10 o'clock news is the Late Late Show on television. But he's been knowing J.D. a long time, and they've been through a lot of things together. I guess James Blackwood and J.D. have been together longer professionally than anybody else. And I understand it. You know, one time not too long ago, he and J.D. were out fishing in the lake, and they were fishing, and a storm came up. I mean, it was a storm, and the boat was just going to and fro, and it looked like they were going to lose everything and be lost themselves. And J.D. didn't know what to do. He said, James, what are we going to do? James fell on his knees, and he began to pray. Oh, God. He said, oh, God, help us. Said, you know how J.D. has been, and you know how I've been, and if we failed you, I'm sorry. And if you'll just save us, I promise that J.D. and I, J.D. said, hang on, James, hang on. I think it's breaking up. Make him welcome, James Blackwood.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. By the way, Connie, you said a moment ago that you had never before roasted anything but a hot dog. What do you think you're doing here today? By the way, to all the promoters here today, I do have my own personal date book for 1987. Also, J.D., I bring you greetings from your grandson, Ken Turner. Ken couldn't be here today. I noticed when this thing started, all these people had pages and pages of things written down to say, and I didn't have anything written down. I'd never been to a roast before. So I just, as it went along today, made a few little notes here. I was sitting right back behind Tammy Wynette a while ago, and there were quite a few that was requesting pictures of J.D. and Tammy together. So J.D., I saw, as you did, he got up and went over and sat down in the chair and had Tammy sit in his lap. He said, Tammy, it's okay. I'm an old man. You can just sit here in my lap. It's all right. And after a few minutes, J.D. said, Tammy, I believe you better get up. I'm not as old as I thought I was. I'm just repeating what I heard. Down through the years, a lot of people have come to me and said, why did you choose J.D. Sumner to join the Blackwood Brothers in 1954? Well, I tell you, I've asked myself that same question many times. Today, quite a few references has been made to J.D.'s dentures. And so people have asked me how he lost his teeth. And also others have said, why is his nose flat right on the end? And so I'm going to answer that, and this is the truth. I'm not making this up. When he was just a kid, he was out one day on the 4th of July shooting firecrackers. And he lit one and threw it down, and it didn't go off, as those of you, have shot firecrackers know sometimes they do. J.D. picked that one up and put it in his mouth as though he was smoking a cigarette, and you know what happened? Boom! The firecracker went off and blew off the end of his nose and blew out his teeth. That really happened, George.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, it did. It really happened. J.D.'s daddy, what we call in Mississippi, I guess you call it truck farming. That's that's what we call it down there in Alabama and Mississippi. And he raised mostly peas, and this is true too. And so he would have all the kids after school go to the pea patch and pick peas. And J.D. did not like picking peas, but he had to do that after school was out. But he didn't like school either. And so when he was about 15 years old, and I believe he was at third grade, he was still in the third grade, he decided that he would not go to school anymore, but he would not let his father know about it. So he would leave in the morning as though he was going to school, and instead of going to school, he'd go downtown to the pool hall and stay all day, and then he'd come home about the right time in the afternoon. He's coming home from school, and then go to pick peas. Well, someone ratted on him and told his daddy that J.D. was not going to school, that he was playing hooky. And so the next day, he was down at the pool hall, and his daddy makes an appearance at the pool hall. And he said, "Okay, young man, if you're not going to school, you go to the pea patch." So he made him, he quit school and had to pick peas full time then, all day long. And well, he didn't like picking peas, and so after about a year, he decided to try to get out of picking peas. So he decided one way to do that would be to get married. And there he did probably the most sensible thing he ever did in his life. He found Mary, who, I don't know why, were you drinking at the time, Mary? He talked her into marrying him, and they got married when he was 16 years old, and that's true, and he got a job driving a truck. And so he's been driving trucks and buses ever since. Well, there are other things that you really can't tell in a place like this. For instance, I can't tell about one time in Van Wert, Ohio, when we were singing at a church, and J.D.'s stomach was upset, and he headed for the men's room, and it was a one-holer, and somebody was already in there. I wish I could tell you the rest of it. I can't tell that. I just can't tell that. Now, I want to tell something that is very dear and precious, really, to me. As has been mentioned here today, I think it was 1977 or somewhere several years ago when J.D. had open heart surgery. And he went to the doctor, and they told him he'd had a couple of heart attacks and told him that he must have bypasses. And so he called and told me about it, and I drove up to Nashville. And the night before he was to have the surgery, he called all of his family in, his mother and his sisters, his wife, his daughters, and the entire, all the family. And he called me in too. And unbeknownst to me, and perhaps to the rest of the family too, he had a tape recorder in his room since he'd been in the hospital, and he had made this tape. And so he called us all into this waiting room and told us he had something he wanted us to hear. And he had the tape recorder and turned it on to play what he had recorded. And he spoke directly to each individual member of his family. And then he said, then, James, while you are not a blood member of my family, I spent so many years with you and we were so close, I do consider you my brother. And he went ahead to tell me things that, of course, we were all sitting there crying. And I will never forget that, and the fact that I was the only person outside of his blood family that he included in these remarks. And of course, naturally, I was very, very touched by it, and the fact that he said, you are my brother. And so here today, I'm happy to be here to have a little fun, but also to pay tribute to one of the greatest guys in the world, one of the biggest hearts anybody can have, my brother, J.D. Sumner.